evil-looking face. And then when I turned and we looked eye to eye to each other, about 4 foot away. He charged. He bum rushed me. And when he bum rushed me, he knocked me clear over. I went out that door. And the wife back there, she's screaming about Peter Pan. She said, "What was that?" I said, I lied to her. I said, "It was just another draft." But I got to tell you, that was another one. You imagine being in somebody's crawl space in a strange place. You could feel it, and you look over, and 3 feet away is the face of Jeepers Creepers, but only angry, mad, and just wants to kill you. And then it mad rushes you, and knocks you off all fours, because that's what happened.
Wow.
And that was just another case.
Well, I got one. It's a story. My grandmother and grandfather, I always call him Grandpa, they moved from Whidbey Island, that's in Washington State. They had a farm, and they moved up to, a Seattle area. And they rented a house, and it was like a one-bedroom house, and they lived in it for about a year. And, they were retired. My grandmother at that time was babysitting during the day and, being a housewife to my grandfather. But a lot of strange things were going on in this house. And she would call up my mom and say, "Hey, things are moving around." Or they would hear noises or banging on the walls. And she was getting really concerned about it. This went on for about a year. And it was getting worse and worse. And a bad smell would come and go. And they just couldn't take it anymore. So they went and bought a small house a few miles away. Well, the house got rented out to another person, and I guess they had some type of problem where the tenant went down, under the crawl space underneath the house, talking about crawl spaces. And here he sees a blanket with chains wrapped around it.
Oh, my God.
And you can figure out what happened. The original owner of the house murdered his wife and put her down underneath the crawl space and then rented the house out. How stupid, number one. But number two is that that house was haunted. And I think she was trying to tell, my grandfather and my grandmother that, that she was there. And that's why all these weird things were going on.
Absolutely. My goodness, talk about an unsettled, not at rest spirit. You imagine being killed and the energy and the emotions of that, and then being thrown away like garbage in the attic. Yeah, I can.
Not in the attic.
Wow.
This is on the ground underneath the house in the crawl space.
Oh, the crawl space that's just as bad or worse.
Yeah, and the body was actually underneath the bedroom where they slept. So, could you imagine all the negative vibes coming from that, deceased body?
My goodness, that had to be palpable in that house. Wow. I don't even know how you could sleep in there.
Well, yeah, but again, I figured out after, I was a young kid when this all happened, but it made the news and the guy got naturally arrested. But, I'm thinking about that weird smell that would come and go. I hate to say it, probably the body decaying.
Absolutely it was. Of course. Wow. That is just rotten. And then to have just to be so egotistical, just to think to leave it there. I mean,
well, you'd have to be crazy, though. You killed your wife, right? And you put her underneath the floorboards, underneath the house, and you rent it to people, and you think nobody's ever going to go and look underneath the house or do anything? I mean, he didn't even bury her. It was just, there she was, next to the beams underneath. Crazy situation. I mean, I maybe the guy wanted to get caught. That's the only thing we were talking about at the time, is that the guy probably wanted to be caught.
Yeah, that's bizarre. That's like John Wayne Gacy. He had all them bodies of those men buried underneath his basement, in his basement, like 20-some victims or so, or however many. But that's bizarre.
Was he the one that was eating these people?
No, that was Dahmer.
Yeah. When they came there into his place, there was all kinds of vats and, like what you make beer in with body parts in that he was cooking.
Yeah, that guy was out of his mind. Do you know, years before that, his first murder victim, I think it was in Ohio, in the western part of Ohio, and he had the body chopped up in pieces in black trash bags in the back seat of his car. a patrolman pulled him over, asked him what was in those bags, and he told him just garbage or something. Never looked at him or nothing. But if he would have got caught right then, he would have never killed the other however many more he killed, 20 or 30 some. It just goes to show you that he was just lucky at that. And fate had it, he didn't get arrested in. He went on to kill, God, I don't know, 20, 30 more people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, anybody would come up to his house, including the postman. I remember that. Well, you know what? A man had, for 18 years, a breathing problem. And he thought he had sinus problems. So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor discovers a balloon, with marijuana crammed up his nostril way in. Now, this is true. This is in Australia. The doctors had to remove the balloon. It was inside of his nose, and it was inserted in his nose up there for 18 years. How could you put a balloon with some marijuana up your nose unless you were going to get pulled over and you didn't want to be arrested? You stuck it where you figured no one would find it. But how would you forget about it? Or he couldn't get it back out and he just lived with it. I don't know. That's crazy.
That is beyond the logic. It just for 18 years. I mean, all he had to do was give himself some forceps curved and reach up there and pull it out some way or another. Wow, that is crazy.
That's one of the most craziest ones I ever read so far. And Sam, what do you have? And also, I want to say hi to Karen Banks out there tonight.
We have some really strange stuff that happens here that's associated with our local tavern. I mean, it's 100 years old as of this year. And there have just been reports of all sorts of strange activity, ranging from beer glasses being flung clear across the bar. I think that's kind of typical of a lot of bars where the entities just simply push them all the way across. We've actually had a more recent thing where the owner and an associate was sitting at the bar. This is past closing time. And we had one of those fans on the ceiling. And it was off. And while they're sitting there, they just start turning on their own. They come on. So they look at each other and look up at the fan and say, that's kind of strange. So they reach out there, it's kind of, you got to pull the chain. And it comes off. So a few minutes goes by, and all of a sudden, the fans start turning again. Fast. And they shut it off again. Very bizarre stuff. I've actually had, we have chains, from some of the old logging stuff. We have the implements hanging on the walls and things like that. So we have some heavy metal things like chains hanging there. And you would hear those things rattle every so often. They'd go banging against the wall. And I haven't experienced some of that stuff directly, but a lot of the locals who've been in here have actually heard that or seen that thing happen like that. And especially with the bunkhouse right next to the tavern. We've had a friend, I'm not going to mention names or anything, but they stayed in one of the bunkhouses where you had to get the ladder to the upper part where the bed would see a dark entity show up. She'd look at the clock on her thing, and it would be like 3 o'clock in the morning, and the entity was standing over. And then all of a sudden, she closed her eyes, just try to go to sleep and ignore it. And she looked at her watch again sometime later, and it was midnight. Somehow there was a time change. In other words, there's 3 hours of, we're not talking about 3 hours of missing time. We're talking about ending up 3 hours later and then going back 3 hours. So go figure that one. And then she had
that's crazy.
A case where in the same one, hang on a second. Okay. The bathroom mirror. And, there's a lot about mirrors, too. Things that get reflected in it. She saw what looked like a dark entity was staring at her through the mirror and took a picture of it. And I looked at the picture myself and tried to enhance it. And I could actually see what she was talking about. And there was no reflection to cause that to happen like that. Well, it's just some of the weird things that have happened here, for instance. I mean, I've had my own personal experiences. One time I was 19 years old in that old house that we lived in, and waking up with some heavy entity laying on top of me, breathing very heavily, and paralyzing me where I couldn't get up until I prayed about it, and then it let go. That happened. That was all I needed, was that one time. And then there was one other instance where I was in a hotel in North Carolina and was just laying there in the bed, and I was looking at the white walls for some reason. I was just kind of staring at the upper part of the ceiling. Then I noticed some kind of entity. It looked like a apparition that was floating through the air. And it looked like the kind you've seen on the movie Ghostbusters a little bit. Not the slimy-looking dude, the one that was in the library. Had that skull look and everything, and was kind of just floating down, just like through water, right towards me. I just laid there and looked at this thing as it was almost like a puff of smoke. It was very bizarre, almost like vapors. And they were moving toward me, but it had some kind of form, and it had that skull form. It went right up to me and went right through me and kept going. So those are some of my more bizarre experiences with the paranormal I haven't talked about too much.
Yeah, interesting. Now, we're about 2 minutes away from the bottom well before we have to go for break. I just want to say, in Tennessee, they allow people to throw pumpkins off this bridge, which is a 150-foot drop, just for they can let the people know what it would be like if a body fell off the bridge.
Oh, my goodness. What an experience. Jeez.
Could you imagine 150 foot up, and then all of a sudden a pumpkin, it would explode?
Yeah, it'd be going about 120, 100 miles an hour. Probably time it hits, it would explode all right. Wow.
Hey, do you guys like avocados?
No.
I do.
Well, I just was saying, if you do, you should get down to Texas on their main highway going through Dallas. A semi-truck crashed, and it covered the whole roadway with thousands and thousands and thousands of avocados.
Better grab the chips.
Yeah. I don't know.
Hey, you ever hear of some of the gateways to hell? Just real quick.
Well, we don't, unless you can do it in a minute.
Yeah, I can do it less than a minute.
Okay.
There's a cemetery in Kansas called Stoll Cemetery, Gateway to Hell. Legend says the devil shows up on the spring equinox and Halloween at the cemetery. It is also said that those who died by murder would rise again. And so tonight would be a night to see the devil, I guess. One of the nights.
Well, I still like what they were telling, in the news. Tell your kids. Well, and I'm not even going to repeat it tonight, but, basically, it's a good night to see Satan. I don't know. Halloween is not scary. Not like it was when I was a kid. And I'll tell you more about that after we get done with our break here.
Sounds good. Can't wait. Looking forward to it.